Hi everyone, this is Dr. Sarah Yu. I am Dr. Sarah Yu for U.S. Senate show host and as well as Dr. Sarah for Today's America World, as well as U Vision and U Right TV, local TV show host. Today I have wonderful, successful and Republican woman leader, Gretchen Wollert here to speak about today about Donald Trump as well as future Republican where we need to go, comparable previous our great President Abraham Lincoln as well as several other presidents. We can mention that. So welcome. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so much accepting our invitation. So can you tell me about yourself? Yeah.
Well, I have been farming and ranching here in Southeast Wyoming for about 30 years. Met my husband in Southeast Colorado. I was born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky. I left home to go to college in Tennessee, and then I headed west just to follow Greeley's mandate of the past. Go west, young woman, is what I actually did. Ended up in Colorado, met my husband, and then we farm and ranch here in Southeast Wyoming. We've raised 4 daughters here on lots of faith, freedom, lots of chores, and they have all graduated from the University of Wyoming and are in various parts of Wyoming now, and we have 3 grandchildren. I am an educator. I have a history degree and an English degree and have taught school for years. I'm not teaching currently right now. I do substitute sometimes, but we are very busy. We have a small business. I've had several small businesses with my husband, as well as the farm and the ranch, but that keeps us busy. We raise cows, cow-calf operation. We also raise alfalfa, corn, and sunflowers. So we are busy. We're just now ramping up. We have a lot of baby calves on the ground. The weather is starting to get nice. And yeah, that is my background. I am busy with a greenhouse and garden center for about the next 4 months. And then in my off time, I like to do some writing, and my passion is American history, especially Abraham Lincoln. And I believe that we are in a critical time in history right now. And my book, Born to Fight Lincoln and Trump, is actually how incredibly similar not only Donald Trump and Abraham Lincoln are, but also the times in which our nation is so incredibly divided right now.
Great. So I thank you so much sharing that. I went to a CPAC meeting last 2 weeks ago, and I met Donald Trump, and I was invited a special guest. We invited a few people. We had a small meeting with our great President Donald Trump, and most Republic, or like our evangelist leaders supporting Donald Trump because he is a very conservative as well as a very biblical value. So I wanted to, because you wrote about Donald Trump between Abraham Lincoln, so I wanted to what is exactly you finding from Abraham Lincoln, our great President Abraham Lincoln, and also our great President Donald Trump, the similar or maybe difference, or maybe more the expenditures, their view of the politics. So can you share that, please? Yeah.
Well, my book all started in 2016, and a lot of us remember the election in which Donald Trump was not supposed to win. And that was, I thought I knew a lot about Abraham Lincoln, and I did know a lot about Abraham Lincoln. I taught school children for years, but I didn't know as much as I learned. There were a few similarities with Abraham Lincoln and Donald Trump. First of all, they won with less than half the popular vote. Of course, his 2016 election, he wasn't supposed to win. And it was quite a shock to the Democrats that he did. It was a shock to the Democrats in Abraham Lincoln's day that he won that election. And it actually tipped off the Civil War. They also were very tall. They both had 10-year-old sons when they were elected. And their first ladies, both of them, Mary Todd Lincoln was Abraham Lincoln's first lady, and Melania Trump were absolutely lambasted right off the bat by the media for everything they wore, and actually everything they did. They were not treated very kindly by the press. And that got me thinking, could there be more similarities between these two presidents? And actually, after diving deeper and 3 years of research into just many, many books on Donald Trump and Abraham Lincoln, as well as their own writings and their own words, I realized that I ended up with 10 chapters of similarities of them. And they are in different categories. It is not, one thing that I discovered about Abraham Lincoln is we see a kind of a myth. Abraham Lincoln was a real man, and there are many even cringeworthy qualities that he actually had that we don't really know about, that I talk about in the book. He was a very common man. And the similarities with Donald Trump, of course, the differences, there are some very huge differences. The personalities are very different. Abraham Lincoln actually had periods of deep depression. Donald Trump, as far as I know, he's never been depressed. He's just not that kind of person. But some similarities that are kind of noteworthy. One thing that really surprised me about Abraham Lincoln was his humor was very scatological. He had a lot of dirty jokes. He appreciated telling stories and telling jokes to lighten not only his mood, but all the mood around him. He got that from his father. Abraham Lincoln's father was a great storyteller and always had a funny joke to say. But Abraham Lincoln wasn't concerned about the topic of the joke, and a lot of them are dirty and just not very, very clean. But he was concerned about how witty it was. So that was one thing I learned about him. I didn't realize that Abraham Lincoln really loved jokes, and a lot of it was raunchy humor. But their ancestors on both Abraham Lincoln and Donald Trump, they were very ambitious and hardworking and traveled from distant places. They were both very precocious as children. Both were masters at media manipulation. Abraham Lincoln used the media of his day in brand new ways in which presidents before him never used it. And of course, Donald Trump is a master of the media, beginning with Twitter, and then actually making the press just completely go berserk with everything he said on a daily basis. But they also had both of them, a natural and sincere connection to the common people. And in my book, I separate it with 10 chapters about how they raised their families, their faith. Neither are church going, but they have a very deep and sincere faith and a moral core that drives what they do. I think both of them have very similar successes. Abraham Lincoln, I think we all consider him to be successful in bringing America back together after the Civil War. And that was his laser focus. And basically, he made America great again. And he was committed to that and never lost sight of that. And Donald Trump has a laser focus with making America great again and everything he does. And he has done so much for the Republican Party. And I believe that without him and without the MAGA movement, there will be no Republican Party. What he has done, he interrupted the Democrats' slow and successful takeover of many parts of America. He showed us what the deep state was. We have so many things have been revealed with what Abraham Lincoln called, and this is one thing that Lincoln absolutely did. He referred to the Democrats as skunks and evil, and he said what a skunk wants to do is to stay secure under the barn. But what Donald Trump has done is he's called them out. And now that is why Donald Trump is so hated. And by the way, Abraham Lincoln was hated by half the nation prior to and during the Civil War. So they both had to deal with that. Abraham Lincoln, he was, of course, the first president of the Republican Party. It was a brand new party. It took over basically the Whigs, and it was absolutely meant to be the anti-slavery party. So what Abraham Lincoln stood up against in the 1850s and then as president was the Democrats' desire to have their own kind of nation. And of course, they wanted a nation in which they could be free to have their slaves. It was a slave economy. That's exactly what they were fighting for. The Democrats today, what Donald Trump stood up and said, wait a minute, we don't want to go there, is the Democrats' desire and the liberal left's desire to head us over into a socialist, globalist nation that scorns America first, that scorns conservative Christians, that actually wants to destroy Christianity in America with the wokeism, and completely hypocritical in what they talk about and what they say. They are no longer champions of women's rights, because when you have transgender men in women's sports, there's nothing beneficial to women about that. And also just the different things that they want to do is something that conservative America has to stand up and fight against. Donald Trump showed us how to fight. He showed many of the Republicans how to fight against the Democrats and what they want to do.
Right. I think that we needed to, as we are Republican, I'm the Republican candidate, also support Donald Trump. We have so many, as you said, the wokeism, all over place, socialism, cancel culture, as well as the trans, the gender. Now parents, they have like their boys or girls make, what they want to their sexual choice is even young age. As well as we have so many communist, as well as so many things going on in Democrat liberal policy makers. They vote for those law, even so we need to fight for the conservative values. So I have another question that I read Abraham Lincoln's books as well as as I'm a pastor at church. I was so impressed this word, which is Abraham Lincoln said that my White House is not my office. My White House is my prayer's house. So I just want to know more about between the Abraham Lincoln and Donald Trump, what their religious, like Christian base, what is similar or what is difference, or what we should go for fight for as because all the Republicans say we are God and country and family, so we have to have some Republican identity to tell people what really Abraham Lincoln, President Abraham Lincoln fight for those Republican identity, those biblical value and religious, freedoms. They fight for a lot of freedoms. So I just wanted to asking, you have any more like information share about background of those Abraham Lincoln and between any but the President Donald Trump or Abraham Lincoln's they're like based on faith, how effective to today's our leader Republican. Oh, so many questions, but you can what I try to just know about. So just share, please. Yeah.
Yes. Well, one thing that we need to be committed to as Republicans is we were founded with Christian values and with that religious element, that if our Constitution were not, I believe it was Benjamin Franklin who said that our Constitution is completely inadequate if it is not a part of a virtuous people. It just will not work. If our nation takes God out of everything, the Constitution is just not equipped to govern any people that are not law-abiding, that are not that do not have faith in a higher power, in God. Our founding fathers believed in that, absolutely. Benjamin Franklin, in fact, said the older he got, the more he was sure that God intervenes and he guides what happens. There are many of the founders who did not believe that the Revolutionary War could have been won without his guidance. And one thing about Abraham Lincoln is some similarities between him and Donald Trump. First of all, when they were young, when they were really young boys, they were both taught in the church. They were taught basic tenets. Donald Trump was taught in church Sunday school. He was raised in the Presbyterian church. Abraham Lincoln was taught by his mother from the Bible. And but then when they got into their teenage years, there was rebellion there, and the desire. Abraham Lincoln had a desire to seek his own way and to go start his own life. And he was very eager to leave. He left home at the age 21, which is the age when you are allowed to leave home, when you're no longer needed on the farm by your family. And the last thing Abraham Lincoln wanted to be was a farmer, so he left home. But he had his first love actually died tragically of disease, and that just crushed him. I think it affected his faith. But anyway, Donald Trump also had a time where they were not churchgoers, kind of rebellious, getting out into the world and doing their own thing. But then as Abraham Lincoln became older, he got married. He actually lost a little 3-year-old son. And in the White House also, he lost little Willie when he was 12 years old. So his mother died when he was 9, Abraham Lincoln's. And so he's gone through tragedy, and that has kind of helped him get through those years in which he may have just simply set God aside as, I'm not real sure I'm keen on you. Donald Trump had those same years, and yet there's a wisdom that comes with being in tune with not only humanity around you, but also with your inner self, and realizing that there are things in this world that are completely impossible unless there is a creator and a higher power. And Abraham Lincoln, during his administration, in dealing with not only the deaths in his family, but dealing with the tragedy of the Civil War and all of the death that actually he was kind of responsible for, because he is the one who stood up and said, we're not letting you take all these forts. We're not going to let you just secede and without a fight. We are the United States of America, and that's basically what Lincoln did. But in speaking of slavery, he said, you know, if slavery is not wrong, nothing is wrong. And Abraham Lincoln had this incredible moral core that we could say that his religious, he wasn't the way he the reason he was so honest, the reason he tried to always do the right thing, and he was a very honest lawyer, was that he said, if I do good, I feel good. If I do bad, I feel bad. So he really dealt with his conscience in guiding him. But he was also an avid reader of the Bible. He respected the Bible. He knew what it said. He knew it inside and out because he learned to read with it a lot. But also during his presidency, he read it often to console and to seek wisdom from it. And Donald Trump as well. He has that in his, old age, I guess. He's come back to believing that, yes, there is a God and he does intervene. I believe in his first administration, he made a point in his campaign of he knew that he had to have Christians behind him. But he sincerely believes in a deep faith in God. In his, he made sure that everybody saw his confirmation picture. But also, he has developed a deep respect for the Bible. He always appreciated the religious community laying hands on him and praying for him. And he has realized that that is absolutely important. Yes, he has those qualities that make so many Christians cringe because he has his faults. He's a person just like anybody. And when you study Abraham Lincoln, you realize that he had his faults as well. One thing about the two and their Christian faith is it is absolutely genuine because neither of them ever used it for show. It's neither of them, they weren't church going, and they didn't just go to church just so people would see them in the pews. Their faith is honest, and that's a similarity between the two. But as Republicans, we must absolutely stand strong and stand completely uncompromising for these values and these principles that are so under attack today. And it's been happening for years and years, taking the Bible out of the schools, removing the 10 Commandments, but also those things where political correctness showed Christians in our nation that, we're not supposed to say that because it'll offend somebody. And boom, here comes Donald Trump and says, wait a minute, I'm going to say Merry Christmas and I'm going to say all these because I have the right. I have freedom of speech. The First Amendment applies to everybody. And he showed the Republican Party that we don't need to be just a party of status quo, just the party of nice. We can stand up and be just and fight with equal intensity. One thing about the Republican Party through history is they don't like to change, and they don't like the discomfort of getting in somebody's face. It's just we have a lot of easygoing Republicans who want things back the way they were. Let's get the deep state hidden again so they can wreak their havoc without being upfront. Let's just get back to nice. There's no getting back to nice. Abraham Lincoln knew it whenever the Democrats seceded. And today we are in that same incredibly intense divide in which one side wants to do their own thing and the other side wants the nation that our founders wanted. Principles and traditional values and freedoms, and not the freedoms that the left is saying, freedom to do everything and anything you want, no matter how immoral it is. But the guidelines that Christian values bring to our party, and we need to stand up for those.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That and this is because we set the time, so this is my last question for you. And you wrote between the Abraham Lincoln and Donald Trump. So every Republican, not maybe every Republican, most Republican, they wants to conserve value. That's why we support Donald Trump. So between those Abraham Lincoln and Donald Trump, if he become like 2024, win the elections, what most he needed to do solving our today's large problem, large is political issue. We need as you said, political correctness. We have the lot of the issues going on as well as technical, correctness needed to. So tell me about that. We have 3 minutes remained, and so can you answer that question, please?
Well, what Donald Trump needs to focus on in the next election, first of all, election integrity has to be solved. We have so many states who are still allowed to get away with things that are not legal as far as votes. What happened in Arizona, I believe, is absolutely a travesty. What happened in 2020, there is legitimate concern. And we had many Republicans who simply just, it was not something, how can we say an election was stolen? And they weren't willing to even, let's just look at these things and find out what is the matter. I know one thing, and this is why Donald Trump came out so early, is he has a lot of work to do as far as election integrity, but he also plans to make sure that whatever the Democrats are doing in a certain state is he will have a Republican army to do that same thing as well. If they're, he will make sure that he's become smarter. And this is something Abraham Lincoln absolutely did. He learned as he went, and he learned as he needed to. And Donald Trump is absolutely smart in that area. He's not going to make the same mistake twice. He will make sure that the campaign includes a lot of ballot harvesting where states have ballot harvesting. So he has to get this campaign going. And it takes a lot of months and months to develop something that has not occurred in the Republican Party. But he does really well with fighting fire with fire. So he's stepping up to the plate with that. But he needs to also focus on all those things that were important in his first administration. And those things, the judiciary, thanks to Donald Trump, Roe v. Wade was overturned because of the 3 Supreme Court justices he put in there. And by the way, I want to make sure that Christians in America need to understand that we didn't get Donald Trump. We don't want him to just be nice. He's in there to fight for our values. And he is actually demonstrably the most Christian president the Republican Party has ever had. He needs to work on, securing the border, all of those things that were so important, but also protecting our children. The school systems have incredible stuff that does not belong with children. The transgender and all of that, everything to do with sex that the left wants to make sure children are completely. Economy was incredible. He's a master negotiator. Of course, he wrote The Art of the Deal. And one thing that we can all be convinced of is Donald Trump will never give up. He is tireless in fighting for the nation that he wants to keep. And he wants to make sure that America comes back great and strong. Energy independence. He is, so many of us are absolutely against all of the climate change mandates, and that, climate changes all the time. It's called weather, and it's not based on fact. It's simply a part of their absurd agenda. And one thing, Donald Trump, is he's able to accomplish many good things in the midst of chaos. He has learned, and in my book I talk about how he and Abraham Lincoln have both grown up, and they were born to fight, but they also developed their genius as presidents from the different things that they did in their lives. And Donald Trump has spent a lifetime learning how to overcome problems, how to make great deals, how to do what people say is impossible. You tell Donald Trump that it's impossible, and he will find a way to make it happen. He absolutely is so incredibly connected to the everyday person. One thing that's similar about Abraham Lincoln and Donald Trump is they're not so much experts at public speaking. It's kind of hard to think about Abraham Lincoln that way because we know his incredible speeches, his first and second inaugurals, and the Gettysburg Address. Those were very practiced and very deliberate speeches. But when Abraham Lincoln talked off the cuff and he was just speaking, it was absolutely on the level of anybody could understand what he was saying. And Donald Trump is not a master public speaker, but both of them were masters at speaking to the public. And everybody can understand what they say. They reduce it in the simplest terms. And Donald Trump, of course, he likes to make sure that everybody knows this is basically what happens and is what is happening. Whatever comes out Donald Trump's mouth, you can bet he is thinking it. And so that makes him one of the most honest presidents we have ever had. We don't ever have to guess what he's thinking because he says it. And that's something that so many people love him for. He is not a politician. Whatever he thinks and says and does is all the same person. And that's exactly what Abraham Lincoln was. He was genuine. Whatever he thought, said, and did was all just one person. It wasn't three different things. And so that's the difference in there. But Donald Trump has taught the Republican Party how to fight. He is the leader of the party, and that is exactly why he is being attacked over and over again. And it's yet to be seen if there will be something that will eventually take him down. I have no doubt that just like Abraham Lincoln, he was, of course, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. But they're trying in every other way to take down Donald Trump. It's just not working because some people believe that it is Providence that is helping Donald Trump to be in there to fight for our traditional Christian values in the America that respects the Bible, respects God, respects all of those good things that our founders wanted in our nation. And he is the leader of the party. If the Republican Party, the rhinos and the deep state actually do to him what happened in 1912 to Teddy Roosevelt, in which Theodore Roosevelt was running in 1912. He won all the primaries, and yet the Republican Party thought he was a little too progressive. He did things that were kind of in your face, some really good things, but they were a Republican Party that didn't like change. They didn't like all the stirring that Teddy Roosevelt did, and that's kind of similar to what Donald Trump is doing. Too many things that Republicans have not wanted to do because they don't like the boat to be rocked. And a lot of American people just really appreciate Donald Trump for fighting for the people. And we believe that the people should be running the country, but it has gotten away from that. And now we are in a battle with two different sides, and the side that wins, and there's no common ground in the middle. Over history, there used to be things in common, but now the two agendas are absolutely without any common ground. And that's why we are as divided today as we were just prior to the Civil War. And whoever wins, I think there is a bigger fight coming. And it needs to be smart. I think Donald Trump has learned how to work with those things that he didn't really understand in his first term. But now he is much wiser, and he will be much smarter this time, and make sure that he's able to not only work with Congress, but also do some things that will be able to fight against the censorship and the mainstream media and all of everything that we have been up against in the last 6 years.
Great. Thank you so much for your answer. I have another, question that as you are the voter, right? You have kids, as a teacher, as a parent, as well as you are the Republican woman leaders, as well as you are older. So what exactly now America had a problem? How, if Abraham Lincoln, the coming here today, what advice give to us, or how he can solve this all the problem we have between civil disagreement, Democratic and Republican. Now we have all the Congress has a civil disagreement, one party yes, one party no, and one party yes, and then a lot of decision, we take a longer time because of those civil disagreements. So just give us some insight. You study Abraham Lincoln, President Abraham Lincoln, President Donald Trump. So how Abraham Lincoln can solve all this inflation, homeless, crimes, as well as the between, Democrat and Republican. We have pro-con is abortion, as well as gun control, as well as a lot of volcanism, right? We fight for that. So how all these issues, how Abraham Lincoln, President Abraham Lincoln will fight. Yeah.
Okay, so if Abraham Lincoln were here today, what would he do to
Advice
help?
or what? Yeah, advice or what? How fight? Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can look at what happened back there then with the slavery issue. One thing absolutely that occurred for about 3 decades leading up to the Civil War. 20 years before the Civil War, it was not popular for anybody to bring up that they were against slavery. Since the Revolutionary War, there have been compromises made. In fact, when we fought the Revolutionary War to get our freedom from England, the Thomas Jefferson and the Declaration of Independence, he knew that there was something really wrong with fighting for your liberty, and yet we had colonies that had slaves, and there were people who had slaves. And so they knew that was it was hypocritical. And Thomas Jefferson knew that. But they needed the slaves colonies' help in fighting that war. So one war at a time was something that they believed in. But compromises over the years, and then about 2 or 3 decades prior to the Civil War, there was violence. There was cancel culture. If you were against slavery and you were open about it and you campaigned against it and whatnot, you were attacked physically. even there were lynchings, there were deaths if you were anti-slavery. And then it took time for the American public, the consensus, to generally be anti-slavery. It happened through Uncle Tom's Cabin was a book that came out. There was another book that showed people that, wait a minute, slavery is really bad. It was kind of the thing that was just slipped under the rug. We can kind of think about that today. How many years ago was it that, oh, don't talk about abortion. If you're a candidate, just avoid that issue because it's you don't want to be against abortion because then you won't get the women vote. But more and more Christians are standing up and saying, wait a minute, I am absolutely against the killing of babies. We can compare abortion to how slavery developed and how people became against slavery. We are standing up now, and many more young people are even saying, wait a minute, we know the science, we know that this is an individual person in this woman's womb, and it's not just her body, it's actually a separate person. And so we can see that similarity, but Abraham Lincoln would have absolutely stood up and said abortion is wrong, in the same way that he said slavery, if slavery is not wrong, nothing is wrong. Well, he would say if abortion is not wrong, then nothing is wrong. One thing Abraham Lincoln would have done, I believe, he would have fired Fauci sooner than Donald Trump did. But I think Donald Trump would have fired McClellan sooner than Lincoln did. McClellan was the first.
Well, this is the last question that I want to ask you. When Abraham Lincoln fight for those freedom of slavery, because how he make those policy success to imply to market, because we made every policy we make it, there is we have a technical collectors as well as we have the public supportable as well as employable market. So every policy we made, some person who are benefit for that, they will vote for that. But some group of people, there's not benefit at all. They don't vote that, or they just ignore vote. So I just want to know how, Abraham Lincoln, our great president Abraham Lincoln, to pass those, apply for those all new rule, how negotiation, how persuasion those against his policy, how persuasion or how make able to do the law success.
They did things, but they made the office to be, of course, it was wartime, and Abraham Lincoln expanded the presidential powers. And he said, I have to do these things in order to win this war. And he was willing to do things that no other president in the past had ever done. And he was criticized incredibly for that. But one thing he also did was he was absolutely a believer that the people are those who, the American people, were in charge of what was going to happen. It was their public opinion that drove policy. And any new policies that Abraham Lincoln made, he made sure that he used the media. He used newspapers in a completely new way that presidents had never done before. He made sure to get the media in Abraham Lincoln's time was just as divided as it is today. There were Republican newspapers that were just the Republican agenda and supported their candidates, and there were Democratic newspapers in which they completely criticized the Republicans and only talked about what would benefit their cause. So it was a very divided, there was no unbiased media back then, but he used the media of the day. He made sure that his public speeches were his Gettysburg Address was absolutely to make sure that the people understood that we have to continue fighting to win this war. And that was his laser focus. But he used the newspapers of the day. It was called public letters in order to get his word out directly to the people. And he used that, and he made sure that if he had new policies, he was getting the word out to the people so that he could help sway public opinion and guide, because ultimately it was the people who were going to be voting on this. But also he had to, sway the opinions of the legislators. There were times it was very frustrating because Republicans often were attacking him. So he had to deal with what he called the fire in the rear. We're fighting this war and we should all be focused on it. And then the Republicans are getting after him for little things. And he had to work with that. He tried to work with the Democrats, finally discovered, he was very frustrated, finally discovered that there really were no anti-slavery Democrats. There were some anti-war Democrats, but he finally gave up getting a Democratic support. But he was able to sway enough Republican legislators to get accomplished those many things in his administration. But you've got to get the word out to the people, and you have to convince the people of what you are doing. And that's the same thing that Donald Trump needs to do. Get out and convince the people. But we also have this issue of election integrity. Is if he convinces enough people, will he get enough votes? And that's something there. I think one of the most critical things today is the fair election, and to make sure that those issues that the Democrats get away with a lot of stuff, and that's up to Republicans to hold their feet to the fire and to actually fight back with equal intensity and give consequences to these bad things that Democrats are allowed to get away with. Abraham Lincoln absolutely would not have thought twice about using his presidential power against something that absolutely was wrong and that was against the Constitution. So Congress people lying to the American people, he would call that out. He would make sure that there were consequences for that. One thing Abraham Lincoln did not like was hypocrisy. If you said something, and you better be honest with the American people, that was a sure thing. And so honesty is there directly to the people. And that's what Donald Trump does. And we appreciate that.
Oh, thank you so much. Share those, answers. And can you tell me that how we can meet you more and your website, or how we can buy your books to, understand more about our two great, conservative value fighter for Abraham Lincoln and Donald Trump? Yeah.
Yes, the book is available on Amazon. It's called Born to Fight, Lincoln and Trump. It's also, you can go to my website and follow me on social media. It's Gretchen Wollert, WOLLERT.com.
Thank you so much. I'm so thankful for your contribution, motivation, those two, Abraham Lincoln and Donald Trump, two great America, they're great, same two president. They're our hero and fight for our great America again. So your books, give us a lot of message and voice to nowadays. We need to really select the right president, right candidate, So thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you so much today you coming. Do you have any last message to talk more about,
No, thank you very much for having me on. But it is up to every single person in America to stand up for what is right. That's absolutely something Abraham Lincoln did. There is a right and there is a wrong, and we need to, the Republican Party has got to fight for what is right, fight for our traditional values, fight with equal intensity. and support Donald Trump, because right now he is the only person who is able to stand up against what we are up against.
Great. I'm supporting Donald Trump, as well as, I wish everyone to buy your books and know about, because we support something without knowing this is a really big,
Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so much. You're coming our show, and I would like everyone to vote for Donald Trump. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.